Hello everyone, today we will talk about user forms. User forms are user interfaces that we can use to interact with the users, get user data. We have been using different methods to engage the user. We have been using input box and message box to get user feedback. We have been using buttons, um, but we have been doing those user engagement primarily on the worksheet. Today, we'll look at how we can create a more formal user form to engage the user in a more structured way. And we will also look at a few different controls that we can add to the user form. There are many different kinds of controls that you can build on top of the user form. We are not going to be able to go through all of them. We will focus on three main ones: buttons, option buttons, and labels. There are additional controls that you can learn about. I have posted additional videos from YouTube that you can watch and learn more about the other controls. If you're interested, given the interest of time, we'll focus on these three that we're going to use for our next assignment. As you can see, probably user form, button, option buttons, and labels are all examples of VBA objects. We have seen objects before. Worksheets are objects, ranges are objects, cells are objects. They all have properties and methods. So in this particular case, we're learning about 4 new objects, and these objects do have properties and methods. This is a small list of the many properties and methods available. These are the ones that we're going to focus on. As you can see, some of the properties are very familiar to you probably. For example, the caption, the color, these are pretty standard properties. However, we're also going to learn about some new ones. For example, whether the user form is visible or not. That's a true false value. We can also assign a value to option buttons, and that is also a true false Boolean type of value. We will also learn about methods for the user form. Specifically, we'll look at show and hide. And finally, we'll learn about something completely new that's called the event handlers. Basically, these are code or functions that execute when the user generates an event of some sort with respect to the object. For example, the user can initialize the user form. That's an event. And the code that we write within initialize will get executed when the initialize event is being done. User clicking on the button is also an event. So we can say when the button is being clicked by the user, that's an event. Let's do something. Let's call a function. Let's execute some code. So again, this is something that we have been doing quite a bit with the button in the past. We would associate it with the macro. Here, we will write it in a slightly different way. We'll write it as an event handler. You will see this is actually something that's very easy to do. VBA does it automatically. You just have to be able to find this event handler and write some code within it. So these are the main topics we'll go over today. And for the user form, the easiest way to learn about user forms and controls is really through a demo. So I've decided to do a little demo going over these 12 steps. This will allow us to discuss all the topics that I have reviewed earlier on the other worksheet. And this demo will also be the foundation for our next assignment. So let's get started. So step 1 on the worksheet, we would like to create a button called Show Movie Menu. So let's go to, actually over here, we should insert, no, I'm sorry, we should go here and insert, You can either insert a form control. So we've been doing these form controls. So the form controls do not generate event handlers. You will have to associate it with a macro. We will try to use ActiveX controls this time. So you will see the list of controls are very similar, but these buttons are more modern, and they generate event handlers, a lot more event handlers. They're a lot more powerful than the simple form controls that we have been using. So let's pick an ActiveX control called command button. So you can click on it and you can draw this button over here, and you will see that it's actually very similar to what we have had before, except that now this button has a properties window. You can change the name of the button. I am going to change this to show menu, and I'm going to call it a button show menu. I can change the caption. I can say show movie menu. I can change its color. Maybe I'll make it a pink button. Okay. So what you will see is that whenever this button is clicked, this is called an event handler. This event handler is generated for you automatically, and you can actually write code here for whatever you would like to happen when this button is clicked. Okay, so this is, hopefully you see the difference between an ActiveX control versus the form control we've been using in the past. The flow of activities, so when you create this, what happens after you have created the button is a little different, right? It automatically generates event handlers for you. So that's a little different, but the rest of the coding is actually very similar. So what I want to show you is that click is just one of the many, let me see, one of the events that may be available. Now, buttons can only be clicked, so there's only one available, but you can, let me see, so if we go to this button, well, so click, so but that you can look at the other events. For example, double click, error, get focus, key down, key press, key up. These are all mouse move, mouse down, mouse up. These are all things that the user can do. When a user does something like moving the mouse up, you can actually use the event handler to capture this user activity and then write some code in response to that. We're not going to try any other events. We are just going to try this very simple click event. That's the most frequently used. You're free to explore the other events if you're interested. So what we want is we want to create this button, and we have an event handler over here. Right now, we're just going to leave it blank because we will have to come back to fill out and write some code here in the next couple of steps. But before we do that, let's go back. Well, let's create a user form. So the second step, if you go back to the instructions, you will see the second step is to create a user form. So the way we create a user form is you have to go back to Visual Basic, and then you have to go here, insert, and under insert, you will see that you can insert a procedure, a user form, a module, or a class module. We have learned how to build a module in the past, and now we're going to learn, practice inserting a user form. So if you choose user form, a user form is automatically generated for you. So this is a template. This is our user form. It has a name. We can change this to form, maybe form movies. Okay, so that would be the name of the object. We can also change the caption. Okay, so I can say this is Chang's Movie Theater. Okay, so that will change the title over here, the John's Movie Theater. So this is the caption. Okay, so now we have a user form. It's very easy to create. So what we want to do at step 3, so if we go back to the instructions, you will see step 3 is when the show movie menu is clicked. So this button is clicked, it'll bring up the user form. So what do I want to do? I want to go back to Visual Basic. I want to go to Form Movies. I'm sorry, I want to go back to Instructions. This is where we have the button. Okay, and this button, when it's clicked, I want to be able to show the user form code form FRM movies. I want this user form, okay, this object, you can see it has lots of properties and methods. So the green ones are the methods, the verbs or the activities that you can do with them. So what I want to do is I want to show it. Okay, so dot show will make the form visible to the user. So let's try this now. We now have a button that actually works. So what I want to do is I want to go back to my spreadsheet, and then I'm going to try clicking on the show movie menu, this button. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to click on it. So I want to get out of the design mode. That way I can click on show movie menu. Not sure why it's not working. So let's go back and see. All right. So I think what happened is that I changed the button's name. So it's now called button show menu instead of command button 1. And since I changed the button name, this event handler no longer works. So what I want to do is I want to move this to here. Okay. And then we can try again. So let's go back. And now I'm going to click show movies. And now that has brought up my user form. Voila. So success. Let's go back. You will still see this defunct. You will still see this defunct event handler here. It's blank, and you can feel free to delete it if the name, this thing no longer applies. Okay, so you can just delete it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to step 4. We're going to create a user form. So user form, event handler that makes the user form background VB black when the form is initialized. So initializing is an event, right? So if we go to forms, when you click on the forms, it'll show you the form, but what we want to see is the code. So you can right click and say view code. In the code area, then you can scroll down, you can choose user form, and that will give you a number of event handlers to choose from. Now the event handler we want is called initialize, so I want to choose this initialize here. So that will generate a new event handler sort of template for me. And what I want to do is when the user form is being initialized, I want to change its back color. So this user form is actually called form movies dot back color. I want to change the back color to VB black. Okay. So I'm going to delete this one that I'm not using. Now let's go back here and let's show movie again. Now our user form is black. So this is working very well. Now I'm going to add a button on the user form, called show movies. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my form. I am going to add a button so I can find another command button here. I'm going to draw the command button here, and I'm going to call it show movies. So this is button show movies, and I'm going to change the caption to show movies. Okay. And then the next step is to create a button event handler to call the function show movies when the show movies button is clicked. All right, so this requires us to write a function called a private function called show movies. Okay. This private function, okay, or you can make it public, it doesn't really matter. But when the button is clicked, so what we can do is on this form, we can actually see that there is a button and there's user form. So when this button is being clicked, this click event handler, then what we'll do is we will call the function show movies. Okay, so this function show movies will do a couple of things. So if we go back to our instructions, okay, show movies. Well, we'll talk about what show movies do later on. Okay, so let's just leave the function blank for now. The next step, step 7, is to create a group of 2 option buttons to list the 2 movies and their ratings. Okay, so we are going to need 2 option buttons. So option buttons are these. Option button 1. Okay, so I'm going to call it option button 1. So this is going to be our movie 1. And the caption, I'm just going to change it to movie 1. Okay, and then I'm going to draw another one. This one I'm going to call it option movie 2. And caption will be movie 2. These 2 radio buttons, what I want to simulate is similar to what we had in the midterm, where we present 2 movie titles and then we allow the user to choose only one of them. So they have to choose this one or this one. They cannot choose both. In order to do that, I have to put these 2 option buttons into the same group. So if you go down here, you will see there's a property called group name. What I need to do is assign both of them to a group. So I will call this the movie menu group. Okay, so right now I'm looking at option button movie 2. So if I go back to movie 1, you will see the group name is blank, but I can put in movie menu. Now option 1 and option 2 both have the same group name. This practice tells VBA that I would like to have both of them in a group. And when option buttons are within the same group, that means only one of them can be chosen. So if I choose this one, if the user choose movie 2, then the value for this is true. The value for the other item is false. If you have multiple option buttons all in the same group, then only one of them will be true. The one that's selected, everything else will be false. However, if you do not put them in the same group, using the same group name, then both of them can be selected at the same time because they operate independently. Okay, so this is just why it's very important to pay attention to the group name property. Okay. Now, the show movie function. So if we go back to here, to the instructions, we go down to step 8. The show movies function should now assign movie names to each of the option buttons. Okay. To keep things simple, what we will do is we'll look at the code here. We have the show movies function. What I want to do is I want to just assign a name. So option button, option movies 1, movie 1. That is the option button. I want to change the caption to Titanic. So I'll just make it simple. I'll just pick a movie name. Option movie 2, the caption will be Toy Story. Okay. So now I have 2 titles, and I have assigned the movie names to each of the the option buttons. Let's go back to the instructions. The show movies function should also assign a number as the tag of each of the option buttons. So what does that mean? If we come back here and we look at the option buttons, you will see that it has a property called tag. Okay, it's blank right here. In fact, many objects have this property tag, which is just a secret property for you to store a value. You can store anything you want there, and then later on you can just do a dot tag to access that value. So what we will do, our secret usage of the secret tag property, is to store the movie number in there. So let's say that movie 1 dot tag. Okay, so maybe Titanic is movie number 1. Then I'll put tag 1 over here. Maybe, let's say, Toy Story is movie number 5. Then I'll put 5 in there. So we can use the tag field to store whatever value we need to store right here. All right. So let's come back. We finished step 9. Now we'll go to step 10, create a label. So now we'll learn how to use a label that says welcome customer. So let's do that first. Okay. So welcome customer. So we'll go back to the form and I will add a label that says, this is a label. So a label comes from right here. This letter A stands for label. So if you can drag and drop a label over here, I can change the name. I probably don't need to change the name, but I'll change the caption to welcome customer number. Okay. And then I need another label. So the next step is to create another label to display the customer number. So we will create another label over here. And this label will store the customer number. So I can pick any number I want for now. So maybe I'll say 9. But this number can change, right? So I can change and update this number just by assigning a new number to the caption. So later on, when we need to update the customer number, we'll just have to assign a new value to this caption. But right now, I'll just give it a number, any number. So we have something. Okay. So the last step is to create an end button that makes the user form disappear. So we'll come back here. We'll create another command button over here. So maybe usually the end button is in the corner over here. So what I'll do is I'll call this button end. Okay, and I'll give it a caption called end. All right, so now we want the user to click this button, and when that happens, that event happens, this user, the entire user form will disappear. So what we need to do is double click on this to generate the clicking event handler. So if I click on this, you will see this button end underscore click. This is an event handler. And what I can do is I can just write the code of what I want the program to do when this button is clicked. Okay, when the button is clicked, I want the user form to go away, to disappear. So what do? I can say FRM movies is the name of the user form, and I can hide it. And that's it. So I save this. I now can go back to the form. I can test my program and see if it works. Okay, so I click on Show Movie menu. I now have a user form. I can say Show Movies, and I see Titanic versus Toy Story. And then I can choose Toy Story, or I can choose Titanic. See, I can only choose one or the other. I see a label over here, another label for the customer number. And I can end this user form. It just makes the user form go away. So these are the main ideas of the user form. Hopefully you see how easy it is to build a user form, the controls and the event handlers, and how powerful the user form can be. In our next lecture, we'll talk about how to integrate these into the movie theater exercise that we built for the midterm, and we'll add all these bells and whistles to the midterm to make that our lab 3. So I'll see you at the next lecture. Thank you.